Welcome to the 8 Essential Qualities of Effective Leaders. In the words of Brian Tracy, leadership is the single most important factor in the success or failure of a company or business. In today's environment, leadership matters more than ever. The economic and organizational landscape is changing from the pace of change, which is very fast, to the market forces and competitive pressures. There are also entirely new business models that have evolved in the past few years. Think of Uber and on-demand employment. We also know that the consumer has become very savvy, and they come from a position of knowledge and increased expectations, so companies have to change how they deliver their products and services. And lastly, the workforce makeup has shifted, which requires leaders to address the different expectations of these different generations. And just to look a little more closely at the generational change in the workforce, in the past decade, the makeup of the workforce has shifted to one where the baby boomer generation predominated, with 45% back in 2005 to 2015, where 45% of the workforce is now millennials. And the millennial generation is the younger generation with less experience. And this has really led to a bit of a leadership gap. So there was a survey conducted by the University of North Carolina and the Human Capital Institute in 2014, and organizations are very concerned about their leadership strength. 85% agree that there's an urgent need to accelerate the development of their leaders. And over a quarter of the organizations surveyed reported that 20% or more of their employees will reach retirement age in the next 5 years. And they also feel that they don't have sufficient bench strength of their high potential employees, and they won't be able to meet their future business needs. So only 40% felt that their high potential employees would be able to really meet those goals. So why is leadership so important? Some additional research has shown that only 19% of entry-level applicants have adequate self-discipline for their jobs. 4 in 10 people cannot work cooperatively. On the flip side, when we have effective leadership, we see that 80% of those leaders are placing in the top third of annual bonuses, with their divisions on average performing 15 to 20% better. So effective leadership also tracks to the bottom line. Leadership, of course, is very important. So what are some of the 8 essential qualities for effective leadership? And you'll see my list of 8 essential qualities, and you might have some different terms that you use. But I think we all know what good leadership looks like when we see it. And I expect that these ideas will resonate with you as well. So the first is really about vision. Leaders have a clear vision of the future of the business, and they share it with everyone who works for them in the company. They know where it's going and what it will look like, and that is shared. And there's actually 3 components of your vision, and it starts with the core values of that business, the visionary goals of what you're trying to accomplish, setting goals that speak to that vision so you will get there, and then really understanding the core purpose. These are all parts of your business vision. The next quality is courage, and leaders really have to have the courage to take calculated risks. So they have to think about, where can I take risks and where do I need to? One of the challenges for many leaders is, what changes do you need to make in your team? When you've had long-standing employees, making changes to people, to teams, is often very difficult and takes a lot of courage. But it's important that the leader recognize the skills and competencies that they need to move the organization forward. Sometimes you might be retraining or adding skills to the team, but sometimes there are hard choices that have to be made as well. Now, integrity is probably the quality that really guarantees everything else. At the core of integrity is truthfulness and honesty. And I would put with that realistic approach to what's happening in the organization. And for leaders with integrity, one of those key things is about being consistent and keeping your promises. Ultimately, it means taking responsibility for the good stuff and the bad stuff. Next comes commitment, and I'm talking about a commitment to winning or being the best. Leaders have the focus on the needs of the situation and the results of what they're driving for. They're really looking to focus on their strengths, the core competencies, both in their self and others and in the company. And leaders need to motivate others to do the same. Leaders are also strategic thinkers. They have to have that foresight, the ability to look forward and anticipate, continually think about what might occur, looking at the environment around them, both for the company, the industry, and customers, and even the broader environment to know how some of the business model changes and other things will impact the business, both giving opportunities for where you might take the business, but also thinking about some potential negative consequences that might occur. And strategic thinkers also think critically. It's not enough to just go with the status quo. You have to consider multiple options for achieving goals and then be strategic in how you change things and adopt new strategies. Next comes excellence. Leaders are committed to excellence in everything, products, services, self, and others, and are always thinking, how can we deliver the best product or services? Part of leadership is understanding your own strengths and weaknesses, and leaders always have to ask themselves, what can I and only I do that, if done well, will make a real difference? Sometimes it's easier to do things that other people can also do, but what are the things that only you can do? Now, each of us has room to improve and grow, and this idea of CANI, or continuous and never-ending improvement, is really essential for leaders, both for themselves and their teams, and they need to create that environment that supports and promotes the development of people. And of course, effective communication is really essential for all leaders. If you're going to communicate, you must be able to do that effectively, both internally and externally. And effective communication is really about connecting, building trust, listening, and ultimately getting results. And when leaders communicate effectively, they are able to motivate and inspire others, ensure alignment and focus, and increase shared knowledge. When you're communicating effectively, it's really a two-way conversation, or three or four-way, where you're not just communicating outwardly, but you are receiving information and listening. And that increases the shared knowledge of the organization overall. And because communication is so important for leaders, I'm going to spend a couple of moments talking about a program that we use in FocalPoint that really helps organizations communicate more effectively. Now, when we look at communication, it really breaks out into three different areas. And it's both the words that you use, the body language or energy, and your tone of voice. These all go into communication, how people interpret what you're saying. Now, a big part of that, 55%, is nonverbal. It's your body language. And one of the tools that we use in FocalPoint is called the DISC behavioral style. And what's important with behavioral styles is that each of us has a core behavioral style. And it is a universal language of how we act. It's our way of doing things. And what's interesting about this DISC behavioral style is that it's really a neutral language. There is no judgment or right or wrong behavioral style. There's just different styles. It's also universal. It has been exhibited in all types of countries and cultures across the globe. And another thing about it is a silent language in that it's an observable behavior. So it's not necessarily all spoken. A lot of it is that nonverbal communication. So as leaders and professionals, for us to really understand the different behavior styles is important. And just to go a little bit into DISC and what this stands for, there are 4 behavioral styles, and each of us has all 4 of them to varying degrees, but we will have a predominant style. And you can imagine if you communicate to everybody the same way, that you have a 1 in 4 chance of being successful. So let's take a look at the D, or director, in DISC. Now this is how you handle problems and challenges and exercise power. And 19% of the population has a predominantly D, or director, style. The next behavior style is that of an influence, and how you interact with others and attempt to influence them to your point of view. And 32% of the population has this primary style. The third is the S, the steady relator, and how you respond to change, variations, and pace of your environment. And 35% of the population has this as a primary style. And lastly, the C, the compliant analyzer, how you respond to rules and procedures set by others and to authority. And only 14% of the population is a compliant analyzer. But the important thing here is to understand that each of the different behavioral styles has strengths and weaknesses and likes to receive and give information in different manners. So as a leader, being able to know your own style and recognize the other styles and adapt your communication accordingly is really important in terms of being an effective communicator. And this really leads into the final quality of effective leadership, and that's really one of flexibility. You know, the most effective leaders aren't relying on a single leadership style. They recognize what the situation requires. What are the circumstances in which you're leading? Are you on crisis mode? Is it a routine mode? Are you making short or long-term decisions? What is the readiness of the person? And also, what is their behavioral style? Ultimately, the job of the leader is to get results through others. And since every person is different in some way, and often in many ways, the very best leaders are those who have the greatest flexibility in their styles of working with other people. And your ability to get the very most out of the people who report to you is a key measure of your effectiveness as a leader. So when you take the time to think about who you're working with and what it is you need for them to do, you will invariably use the best tools, techniques, and methods to maximize their performance and productivity of the other person. So in summary, the 8 essential qualities of leaders are vision, courage, integrity, commitment, strategic thinking, excellence in everything you do, communicating effectively, and flexibility. Now, this all kind of comes into your 3 areas of leadership influences. So we all start off with our signature style. That's both a behavioral style, but it's also all of our skills and experiences, our social and emotional intelligence, everything about who we are is our signature style. And then there are leadership qualities. And the next thing is the situation. So when you are leading, effective leaders are able to look at where is that overlap of these 3 influences and focus on what is needed in that situation. So in closing, I would like to leave you with a few inspiring quotes about leadership. I do like this one by Bill Bradley that says that leadership is unlocking people's potential to become better. And so much of leadership is really about getting the best out of the people that are working with you. So thank you for your time today. If you have any questions about leadership development programs or would like some more information, please contact me at the contact number you see on your screen. Thank you so much.